what were some of the challenges that, or changes, per se? You came in 11 years ago. What were some of the changes that you implemented either back then or more recently at Connect?
So when we looked at it starting in '06, what we saw when we touched on this in the last segment was the beginning of the rise of Amazon, right? They had been in business by that point about 10, 11 years, and we were seeing e-commerce, although very, very small. We thought that's where we really compete, because we compete with not just the people in our category and some of the largest companies in the world there, but some of the largest toy companies all over the world. So as big as we are, there are people who are much, much bigger and have a dominant share. So how do we compete for shelf space? How do we compete for people's attention? And so we thought the ability to showcase your products online, and because we have such a visual product, to create fun videos and engage in all of the content that even our kids and families are creating, and sort of spread the word that way. So we focused in right away on that. And so I'm happy to say that more recently, we've been named a strategic partner of Amazon in their category.
Nice.
So
Mazel tov.
Thank you. So it took 10 years to get there, but it was important. And so that's one of the big things we focused on. The other big thing we focused on was making the educational piece for schools easier. So we're trying to solve I think most successful businesses do two things. They listen to their consumers and they solve problems. That's what they do. That if they can add great customer service to that, they got a winning formula, right? So, and what we did is focus on those things. So we saw schools were having issues with how to teach all these kinds of skills to their kids. This was before STEM was the buzzword, but they were trying to work on those kinds of skills. So we created a whole line of products for that. Then we said, okay, the next thing that we really got to look at is how do we make ourselves relevant to digital kids? What does that look like?
Right.
And so we went down the path of trying to bring digital brands to life. So we partnered with Nintendo, who we've done now for the last 6, 7 years, to create working Mario Kart tracks where you build them and it looks like it comes out of the screen. When Angry Birds was hot, we partnered with Rovio and did Angry Birds toys for a couple of years. And so we're looking for the audiences of where kids are and trying to bring those worlds to life as well. So I think those are the big things. We worked on some of the other things as well, as we talked about bringing the manufacturing back from China to the United States. We thought having a shorter supply chain would give us an advantage, especially as the holiday season approaches, because then you can react almost within season, which is a huge advantage for any kind of company. And we thought, and it became a bigger advantage than we even thought, that made in the USA would be a marketing advantage. We got lucky that it became an issue in the presidential election when Obama is the president. So it's become a much bigger issue. I mean, now all you hear on TV is buy American, hire American, right? So it's become even. So it was in our plan. I have to say, it's done much better for our plan than we thought. But we also think it's just the right thing to do. I feel, as a business CEO and as a business owner, that part of my responsibility, if we're lucky enough to live here, is to do as much as you can here, because then it all feeds on each other. When we're providing good-paying jobs to people, and they're generating demand, and then we're all doing that for each other. It's such a virtuous cycle. It's such a great cycle. And so, if we're talking about, and there's a lot of discussion nationally, how do we grow from 2% to 3% or 4%, and it's not going to all be solved by manufacturing, but if you can bring that back as well, it's a big piece. Every dollar in manufacturing yields almost another $1.50 ripple effects in the economy.
Wow.
So, every time we do that, it's just a good thing for the world and for our world, and we're competing globally. So I'm not saying we should do it at the expense of other countries, but I'm just saying let's do our fair share so that the people here, the next generation lives better than this generation, and so on and so on.
What should a company do so that they put the wheels in motion, that they think of creative ideas on how to truly engage with their customers?
Yeah, so we do it in a three-pronged way. So one way we do it is we have our own, obviously, internal R&D team and marketing team that are looking at trends and looking out in the marketplace and looking at research and
R&D
and just doing it that way. The other thing that we've layered on a lot more in the last 5 years in particular has been listening to our social media channels. So what are people saying about us on Facebook? What are people saying about us on Twitter? What are people saying about us on on the reviews, all the product reviews that are generated? What's on YouTube? We created maybe 100 videos a year, but thousands of other videos are created using Connects every year that we're not creating. So, and there's technologies that exist that allows you to aggregate that stuff and watch it, because otherwise you'd be watching, literally doing nothing else. You'd be watching videos all day. It's fun. I mean, it is fun, but there are some other things that you have to do. So you have that. And then some of it's literally just, talking to the families that are in your neighborhood. So the Nintendo idea, actually, I got to give credit to my son. He had gotten a DS at the time back in 2011. He was a much younger kid. And he looked up one day and said, "Dad, I know you're looking at stuff. Why don't you just build this stuff because you could easily do it. And I know, so we kicked it around with the R&D team and they loved it. And we went to Nintendo and actually they said no about 8 times, but finally the 9th time they said yes.
Wow.
And which is a whole other interesting
That's another
discussion
great story.
Well, that was interesting just learning about different cultures across countries because based in Japan, they have to have the U.S. approval, has to have the Japanese approval. It takes a long time. They want to get to know you. They want to trust you. And so all of that took a time. But so it comes from, all the ideas come from all over. But those are the 3 areas we try to focus on.
Now, you touched on this earlier. It's very special how K'NEX is really one of the only toy companies. I'm not saying the only one, but one of the only toy companies to manufacture its products exclusively in the U.S. You mentioned, I just want to really bring it up again because it was very special, how you brought it out. Of course, we know, listen, Trump is making a big deal about it,
right.
and that's the right thing, actually. It really is the right thing.
I think we all agree on that one, right? I mean,
that's correct.
Whatever your opinion is of the current guy,
right.
I think every president
right.
has said, we make more here, we're a stronger country.
That's correct. So that's something that has been in your DNA from the minute you set in?
Pretty much from 2008 on. I mean, the Great Recession really caused us to take a look at what we were doing. At that time, we were making most of the things in China. And we looked, and we had to lay off people, at the Great Recession. We did. And we looked at it and we said, how are we going to bring these people back? Nice. And even if it's not these people, how can we bring people back? Because obviously people have to go get jobs in the middle. And we said, well, if we could bring back everything we're making in China, then we could hire a lot more people. And it sort of started with that. Then obviously we have to figure out how to do it profitably, how to do it efficiently, how to do it, and all those things. And it took us about a year to 18 months to get that going. But that was the thing. And what I've discovered is that it does, you touched on this, what's the CEO role? And I think that the role in this kind of thing is that you have to be the champion for big change. It is hard in any organization of any size to have champions from the middle work their way up. It can happen, right. And we try to listen to people, but it is challenging. And then, when you talk to some of the people you've talked to in the past, and you picked a company like Apple, who you've talked to their CEO, right. When you've got 10, 20, 30, 40,000 employees, the idea that someone over there, you're going to hear that idea is unfortunately less likely to happen. So those big strategic vision has to come from the CEO suite, and then hopefully the senior team then gets behind it and supports it, which is what happened here. So those are the things that you look at. I describe the job of the CEO in this particular way of being strategically lazy. And by that I mean focus on the few things that you can really need to leverage for change, and the rest, get people who know a lot more than you about it to go focus on it. So get a great head of marketing, get a great head of product design, get a great head of operations, and let them really dive in to do that. And that allows you to focus on where are we going over the next 2-3 years? How are we going to get there? And who do I need to go make that happen?
It's interesting you mentioned the interview that I had with John Scully.
Yep.
That's one of those really amazing stories, and he shared it on the air, how he talked about he started off as a truck driver for Pepsi.
Yep.
You imagine? And then and then one day he's the CEO. Obviously, it didn't just happen by snapping a finger.
Right. Right.
But there are times which proves that people at the top also have to keep their ear to the ground by what's going on and picking up, and even from their kids. A great story about that you shared how your kid was the inspiration for what ultimately became a relationship with Nintendo.
That's correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you have to stay open. I think that's one of the things that it's like everything else, it's in balance. But I've found that people who think they know everything tend to fall behind. And so what I realize is that, and one of my favorite quotes really from Bob Toll when I was at Toll Brothers is, the wise man knows what he does not know. And I try to stay focused on that.
I love the honor of interviewing C-level executives and sharing their great advice and perspective on Mind Your Business. I'd love to get your feedback. Post it in the comments below and subscribe. You'll never miss an edition of Mind Your Business.